So one thing that I talk to people about is what really happened as a result of Connect and its first president, Bill Otterson. Bill was a software engineer, and he started a company before people knew what software was all about and sold it to IBM. He had cancer, and from the day I met him in 1989, he was dying. We'd have ups and downs, and he had that little bottle of interferon, and anybody that would listen, he'd talk to. But he was a remarkable person because he was in a hurry, and he was impatient, and he wanted us all to learn. My fax machine did not stop whirling when I moved my company there. Finally, I asked my brother, who helped me start the company, who is this guy? And we met him, invited him over, said, we're going to figure this out. And I gave him $5,000 on the way out the door. He was just that kind of person, and he would insist that you collaborate, that you get out behind your desk, find or run your company, but you're going to give something back in this community, or we're going to call you. So he'd ask politely, then he'd ask a little more aggressively, and then finally he would embarrass you into collaborating. So if you come to San Diego today and you ask anybody that's moved there, anybody, they'll tell you they've never seen any region so collaborative, where people, CEOs will help CEOs, and they can interact with the research scientists, and they have all of this. So the lesson here is simple. The culture is what makes these things happen, not the strategy. And I'm happy to talk a little more about that. But the culture we created there is what was serving us so well today. I gave this talk to a group of very high-level scientists and engineers on the UC President's Board of Science and Engineering. A big debate ensued about Silicon Valley versus San Diego. And finally, a venture capitalist, well-known, I won't use his name, stood up and said, I'll tell you the difference, and I've studied it. He said, when you come to the Silicon Valley and you meet a CEO, they'll tell you what a great company they built and what it's done for the region. When you go to San Diego, they'll always start with what a great place San Diego is. Then they'll tell you about their great company. And it's always in that order. And it's just telling, because people are proud to be part of this establishment here in culture. So that's my culture lecture. This is the world I live in at Connect. So on the left side are those 50-some research institutes, the major ones, that contribute ideas and send them across the street, as we say, to meet with Connect and our entrepreneurs and residents. On the top are all the lawyers, accountants, service providers. Cooley's up there, I noticed, one of our supporters. And down below, the venture capital groups who often don't want to participate or support these kind of organizations. That was my contribution when I came in 3.5 years ago to pick up where Connect was, to insist they become members of Connect, and they all have joined now. On the right are the large, grateful companies that support us. Everybody here is a member, and except for the research institutes who pay smaller amounts of money, the rest are at least $30,000 a year in support for Connect programs and membership that we do. Out of Connect has come 4 trade organizations that we founded. The first was Biocom, now at 500 members, has a budget of almost $5 million, is the largest of all of the trade organizations. The Clean Tech organization I started about 9 months ago. I was going to incubate it at Connect, but it took off so fast that we now have a CEO, a full board, full functioning committees, and it's an independent trade association. Software Industry Council has about 800 members, small software companies in our region, and ComNexus is about the wireless industry that we have there. And we're starting the convergence. Of course, AEA is very active. Tech Coast Angels we manage. The Jacobs has a very special, that's the engineering school, a very special group called the Von Liebig Center. The regional EDC, the Chamber of Commerce Chairman's Roundtable, and the San Diego Venture Group. So the keys to success that when I look back at what happened in San Diego and why is this whole thing starting with culture as opposed to strategy. Nobody had a strategy, it's just culture was built and the strategy came as we went. Initiated by the university and government, but led by the private sector, which I see well represented here. If you leave it to the government, they'll give you, you get a big grant, you sort of live and die by that grant. When you have industry support, it's spread over a huge base, and everybody's sort of independent. You don't have one member who will pull out over an issue and cause the organization to go downhill. The organization leadership was very important. after Bill Otterson died in 1999, we really lost our way. And I was head of the search committee, and that's how I ended up here. But we were able to get it back in. The other important things, we don't charge for anything we do. All these programs that we run are free. And the reason we don't charge is we want to be objective when an entrepreneur or an inventor comes in. I don't want to say, gee, we took their money, we got to help them. They may not deserve the help. They may not have a business, and we need to tell them that. The second thing is we never invest. It's been tempting for us to raise a fund to invest in these early stage ideas. But the minute we do that, we're saying no to 90 out of 100 people we help, and they never understand why you're not loving them. Furthermore, it carries a stigma off into the venture world because they say, if it's so hot, why didn't Connect invest? So we just resisted that, and that's a very important component of what we do. Finally, I mentioned this just a few minutes ago, no grants. The grants kill you because you got to get them renewed, you hire the people, you live and die by them, and I just have resisted those unless they're directly on one of our programs that helps. So just quick, one of the problems that I encountered in San Diego is every time a major well-known company did something like leave town. We had a company called Buck Knives. They make those little pocket knives. They left town 5 years ago, and honest to God, year after year, when people say, how's the economy go? Oh, Buck Knives left town. Finally, I said in an EDC meeting, I said, you know what? I like pocket knives, but I am sick and tired of hearing this because I just don't think it matters in the context of what's going on here. I'll bet you we started 50 high-tech, biotech companies in our region that you can't name and I can't name, but anecdotally we kind of know they're there. They've got alphabet soup for names. They make no sense to us at all. But I didn't forget that we didn't know, and we should know. So I set out when I came over to Connect to, in fact, address that issue, and we've been able to do that with something we call Connect Track. So we track all of these industries. By the way, we're broad-based. We work in everything, even though I'm a life science background. We work in all high-tech areas. So you see the list of things we do, including recreational goods. We have 400 skateboarders, golf clubbers, all that kind of stuff in San Diego now, 400 companies. The defense and transportation, environmental. This is last year in California, in those categories, 3,227 new companies were created, first payroll. And they started with 400 in the first quarter, jumped to 5 in the second, then to 1,000, and then to 1,400. I'm anxious to look at next quarter to see where it's headed. If you look at where those companies are, 693 of the 3,000 are pharma, biomedical device type companies, pharmaceutical, biotech, medical device. Software is the largest with 1,000, and then you see communications, computer electronics, environmental, defense, and recreational goods. This is the data for California, which is just being released, is only 1 year, but I have 3 years of San Diego data because we've been tracking it longer. And you can see a similar fourth quarter, or 2007 for us, where we went from first quarter to fourth quarter, 149 brand new startup companies in San Diego in the fourth quarter. This, and very similar to the state in terms of software is our largest, but we have a tremendous, we have 100 new biopharma medical device companies. It's 25 a quarter. It's about one a day in coming into, it's a phenomenal number. It's not one a day, but it's two a week that are being created in San Diego. And then computer and electronics and communications are very big. This is venture capital from the Price Waterhouse Money Tree report for 2005, 6, and 7. So in 2005, $23 billion was invested in venture capital, $29 billion, almost $30 billion in 2007. And you see the number of companies that were invested in and the average deal size. About half of that, $13.7 billion, went into California. So of the $30 billion, 13.7 went in, created those companies, and a little higher average investment than the nation as a whole. San Diego went from 1.1 billion to 1.3 to 2 billion last year, and the average is even higher than the state of California because we're heavily weighted by life sciences. 75% of those companies that were funded in the 159 are either biopharmaceuticals or medical device companies.